Okay folks, today's video is going to focus on part 2 of forming your own prepper group. And if you haven't watched part 1 yet, which focuses on finding possible new recruits and other preppers, and then which interview questions to ask them, then click on the link that's appearing in the upper right hand corner of the screen now to go watch that video now, and then come back to this one. Now this video is equally just as important as part number 1, because this video will cover how to keep your newly formed group cohesive, and will also cover many typical divisive issues that has a tendency to cause prepper groups to split up. And just to keep it simple, it's not going to do you any good to form yourself a group just to have it fall apart just a few months later or a year later. Okay, now since you have screened some potential new recruits now, and now since you have an actual prepper group, here are some tips to keep it cohesive. As your group grows, you will need to develop rules and SOPs, or standard operating procedures, that will govern your group. And your members and any potential new recruits need to agree upon these rules in order for them to either join or remain inside of your group. And these rules and these SOPs, they need to spell out leadership roles. They need to spell out what is expected of each member, and they need to spell out what the consequences are if those members decide not to follow the rules. And besides just spelling out how members will conduct themselves prior to SHTF, they also need to spell out how day-to-day life will happen, or how day-to-day life will be ran should you have to band together after SHTF. And you really want to try to write these rules, these SOPs, these bylaws that will allow your group to grow and to shrink. Let's say that your group's SOPs state that the governing board is made up by 4 people that is elected by the members. Well, then what happens? How will you write? You need to make sure that your SOPs are written so that if one of those members leaves the group, or whatever happens, but now you end up with 3 elected people, you need to write into your rules how a new 4th one can be elected or put into that leadership role. And you will also want to write into your SOPs of exactly what members can and cannot take back with them from your bug out location, from your prepper retreat location, should they decide to leave the group. So just kind of give an example, most prepper groups will have a location that they plan to evacuate to should SHTF happen. And a lot of these groups will usually say, okay, if you're going to be a member of this group, and if you're going to evacuate to this location with the rest of the group, we expect you to have a certain amount of food and other preps already pre-positioned down there at this retreat location before SHTF ever happens, so that when you do evacuate down here, your supplies are already here. And then it's also very common for many groups to say, not only will they say, hey, you have to have a certain amount of food down here, but we also wish to purchase as a community a pump for the well, a good grain mill so that we can grind down wheat, and other things that would be shared by the community. But what established prepper groups run into all of the time is that members will leave the group for whatever reason. Internal strife, disagreements. Sometimes people just die. They get killed in car wrecks. They catch cancer. Sometimes people's jobs just move them across the country. But you will have people that leave your group. So therefore, it's very important that when somebody joins your group and they are expected to bring stuff down to that retreat, that your SOPs, your rules, your bylaws specifically state, and they also agree to this, but your rules specifically state what they can take with them from the retreat once they decide they are leaving. Now, most prepper groups say, hey, if you decide that you're going to leave our group, you can take whatever food you brought to the retreat, you can take whatever clothes that you brought to the retreat, but any money that you chipped in towards a community resource like a grain mill or something like that, that person that's leaving the group is going to be expected to forfeit that money. And then something else to consider is, what if a sudden unexpected death happens with one of your group members? What's going to happen to all of their property that's down at your retreat? If they have several firearms down there, is the surviving family of that deceased member, is the surviving family going to want those firearms and any other items of value back? So something to consider is will you have members write into their last will and testaments, but will you have the members write in that upon their death, if and when they die, that all of their items at that retreat will become property of that prepper group? And before we get to the next important point, a poll should be appearing in the upper right hand corner of the screen about now, and let me and the community know, do you plan on joining a prepper group, or have you already joined one, or do you plan on being a lone wolf during SHTF? And I kind of touched on this a few minutes ago, but your SOPs and your bylaws will also need to specifically spell out how new rules can be adopted or how old rules can be changed or struck down. You will probably find that as your group grows, that you're going to need new rules spelling out certain things, and then you'll also find out that some of the old rules that you had made maybe weren't the smartest rule, or maybe it was a good rule at that time, but it's not going to work so good at the present moment. So that's really something that your SOPs and your bylaws will allow for new rules to be adopted, old rules to be struck down, and again allow your governing body and other decisions to be scaled and brought down as needed. Let's just give an example. Let's say SHTF has happened and your group has evacuated to your prepper retreat location, wherever that is, and you guys have done okay. And then as you guys have done okay, some more people came into your group, and now you're like a small community. And then let's say even more people come in, so now you're actually a community. Your SOPs are going to need to state how work is divvied up, how patrol gets run, who does patrol, how many hours, what areas that you patrol, communications, fire watch, just a whole slew of things that you need to think about, and again get into your SOPs and into your bylaws, and again make them so that they can expand or shrink as needed. So now I'm going to ask you, what tips did you think of that would complement this video, that would help all of us to learn from each other? Hey, please comment below with those. And if you would like to discover how you can use cover and or concealment to your advantage in a gunfight, then click on the link that should be appearing in the upper right hand corner of the screen about now to learn more about that. And if SHTF does happen, you want to, as a prepper, you want to be able to know, to have knowledge, to have skills, to produce stuff from the earth and not just rely on store-bought stuff, to stuff that you could use for barter or to boost morale. So to learn more about that, then click on the video that's appearing on the right-hand side of the screen now to learn about that. Anyways, folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.